We're live. Thank you for being here. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Friday. GameStop has priced their chat screen on the side going off. GameStop has priced their convertible note very quickly, and evidently there is demand because they just offered it and it's already upsized, right? So not even like, oh, it can be upsized to this amount. It was oversold, right? So clearly there's demand for these bonds. Got some different thoughts on that. We just had the annual shareholder meeting. Honestly, kind of forgot about it. I was just caught up with stuff at work. And also I'm like, oh yeah, the annual shareholder meeting is today. So I should probably check that out, right? And here we are, just getting situated. Pull up the chat on the side here. I actually just clicked off it. I always feel so corny if I ever see that. Like I always say it around jokingly too. I'm like, chat, how are we feeling about this? Chat. But I'm just joking around, so. But also, chat, how are we feeling? How are we feeling, right? It's the weekend, so we're having fun. But yeah, hope everyone's doing well out there, just getting situated. So really the main two topics of discussion today are GameStop's convertible note, how it was priced, and then also the annual shareholder meeting. So I mixed up two things in one there, but let's get everything pulled up here, situated. Do I have everything open besides Obsidian with all my notes? I'm gonna have to add some stuff. I still gotta update my charts. You're my boy Blue. And John, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Can't stop gaming and gaining. John, that's the way, man. Hope you're doing well. Wendy mode, what up? Welcome in. But all right, now we got everything situated. And man, what a crazy time. Like GameStop, every time you think like things are gonna kind of settle down, things just kind of get crazy, right? That just seems to be the way she goes. But overall, there's demand for these convertible notes. That seems very evident to me at this point in time. And the question remains, what are they going to use with the cash? I'm not here to necessarily answer that today. We could speculate, think about it a little bit, but time will tell. It's really as simple as that. And people are calling it now like a glorified SPAC. And it's like, okay, that's fine. So GameStop announces pricing of upsized private offering of $2.25 billion. So that is $500 million more, or $500 million more than the proposed private offering amount. So if you compare them side by side, right? First, we go to the proposed amount. So it was for $1.75 billion, and then it could be upsized up to an additional $250 million. So they could basically raise about $2 billion. Then we got the filing late yesterday. I shouldn't even see it till today. Now it's $2.25 billion. So clearly there was a lot of demand. They essentially oversold it. And it could be upsized another $450 million. So if it's the same scenario as last time, it could be upsized to $2.7 billion. So even much more than we maybe initially realized. And I thought I saw something today. I don't know if it was a credible source that, there's been speculation that GameStop's going to buy PSA because PSA's website temporarily went to GameStop or something. Those of you that know me know how I rock and roll. I'll believe it when I hear it from GameStop. It's fine. We can speculate on it. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's not. But if I haven't heard it from GameStop, I take it with the utmost grain of salt. And I think that's just the simplest way to go about it. But also these notes literally expire in 2032. This is 7 years out, so there's a lot of time. And I saw someone made a comment about like, oh, evidently institutions need the shares. And I feel like that is the case because why would they over acquire these convertible notes? I would have to look back and see if there's any situations where MicroStrategy is usually like the best case study to look at for convertible notes just because they've done it so consistently for the past few years and really kind of open the door for GameStop and other companies to take this approach to 0% convertible note offerings. And I wonder if there are any situations where the pricing of the private offering was upsized because of a lot of demand with MicroStrategy. I suppose it's possible, but this is pretty significant, like an extra $500 million, not to mention now the additional amount could be another $450 million, whereas before it was $250. So they are really building up a massive pile of cash, and they're going to earn a lot of interest on it until they take action with it. And I just don't see a world where they just hold cash for a few years out. So I really think there's going to be an acquisition, and how an acquisition is defined, right? In terms, or how they are considering an acquisition. Are they going to buy shares of different things? Are they going to buy out companies entirely? We're just going to have to stick around and find out. Or you don't have to stick around. You're not obligated to. I can't tell you what to do. I'm a guy on the internet who's not qualified to give financial advice, so just keep that in mind. Do what's best for yourself. But overall, they have a lot of cash, and it just comes down to what they do with it. And I think they'll buy more Bitcoin because also it's a primary part of their investment policy, but also I really think they're seeking to buy the next dip in terms of just publicly traded stocks, or buy the next dip of shares in a company they believe in that they think aligns with their business, or buy out a company entirely. Maybe it's a smaller grading company. That's just a thought I had pop in my mind, but I don't necessarily think that would be the case, because why would PSA want that if they're partnered with them? And PSA is like by far the leading name in the grading industry. Like there's some other ones, but like if you look at this one, for example, right, it's always like looks like this on top, PSA. And there's some other ones that just look like slightly different, but it's like cased and everything. But we'll just have to see, right? Not very exciting to just kind of wait around, but for myself, as someone who's been here quite a while and holding this stock, fine, I could wait a little longer. I don't mind. I don't mind waiting to see how it all plays out. And again, I think they're going to buy more Bitcoin. They want that Bitcoin exposure. Maybe their goal is to always make like 10% of their balance sheet Bitcoin, something to that extent, right? They have some kind of like internal dialogue, like, hey, what percentage of our balance sheet do we want to consistently keep in Bitcoin, and then leave the rest in cash, and then seek opportunities upon them coming. So they can't even redeem them prior to June 20th, 2029. May redeem cash dollar portion. So the same as last time. Okay, 130%. That's what I was looking for. I have to trade 130% of the conversion price, and equivalent to the initial conversion price, which is 32.5% over the volume weighted average price of Class A common stock. So it's the exact same thing as last time, in the sense that upon news of the offering, the stock got pushed way down, and it's because the conversion price is really dependent upon the average price at the time the note is priced. So right here, we saw it get crushed, right? So this is the news of it, and then the day of, just boom, 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 push it all the way down, right? And now, kind of leveled out today. We were in the green. Some, global trade war, not trade war, actual war is apparently going on. Craziness. I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about in terms of, geopolitics and all that, but it's just unfortunate, right? Just at a human level, very simple level, that war sucks. People die. And it's just unfortunate, right? And I'm sure there's very complex issues going on there, and it's not just this or that, but it's just unfortunate to see, right? I think, generally speaking, everyone can agree on that, right? But anyways, point being, that's why the market went down today in the later part of the day, and GameStop naturally was affected by that a little bit because we saw the SPY go down. But I honestly think, it could always go lower, right? You don't truly know what's going to happen in the short term, no matter what the situation is with their balance sheet, cash flow, earnings, whatever the case. If the macro is just going through a difficult period over the next month, GameStop stock could go down to 20 or even a little bit lower, right? Which would be crazy because they have so much cash, and like so much of their market cap percentage-wise is represented by cash at this given point in time. Technically, right? Because it depends if you're looking at like the weighted average amount of shares or like the actual current amount of shares. Because if you're going to see the difference between GAAP and non-GAAP EPS is going to continue to widen in future reports, because GAAP EPS is essentially accounting for the fact that the notes are converted to shares. But we know that upon the notes being exercised, right, or converted, wanting to be converted by the holder, GameStop could say, okay, actually, here's some cash back, right, if they so choose. So that's definitely something to just kind of keep in mind. And then also, I still got to do research on this. I've been saying it's a couple streams. I got to stop slacking. But the new accounting rule, right? FASB ASU 2023-08. So essentially, crypto or Bitcoin on the balance sheet gaining value is going to show up on the bottom line, and it's going to be factored into EPS. Very generally speaking, right? You got to dig into it further. So it's a newer thing that really went into effect this year. So you didn't see it particularly affect GameStop's earnings report that we just got, because they bought their Bitcoin technically in Q2. Q1 is February, March, April. Their buy was between May 3rd and like the time of the report, like June 10th or whatever it was. But we know they filed at the Bitcoin conference. So that was like what, May 28th, May 26th, something like that. So it really was like between that few weeks span from like the second week of May to like the third or fourth week, somewhere in there, right? So people are speculating their average price is like 90,000, could be even as high as 100 or 110. But ultimately, I think if they have a long-term viewpoint on Bitcoin, who cares, right? Who truly cares? Just getting involved in it. It's just their first Bitcoin. Got to start somewhere, right? And they can see where they want to go from here. But overall, how this will impact GameStop, we'll start to, I'll dig into it more, get back to you guys. So stay tuned, drop a like, subscribe. But it'll affect the next earnings report to an extent. And the extent is really based on the price of Bitcoin and how much Bitcoin they have. So again, just another thing to keep in mind. But just a lot of different things shifting with GameStop right now. But my general thought is, similar to last note offering, which we got back here, came way down and then just came climbing back slowly. I think that'll be the same case here. Maybe not exactly the same, right? But like I said, the macro goes through a difficult next few weeks. A lot of craziness with the war or trade war or all the different crazy stuff going on in the world right now impacts the market as a whole. We could see GameStop trade down to 2019, right? I don't necessarily think that'll be the case. I think there's buyers, both individual and institutional, that wouldn't buy in at that price point. And then it could come climbing back, right? But generally speaking, I think this thing is not going to have a hard time getting back to 30 in a month or two. But no one knows what's going to happen in the short term, right? So just be sure to keep that in mind if you're doing any kind of short-term trading activity. But I'm so excited that they have so much cash, honestly. Like, there's really endless opportunities, and you could keep talking about it. It's going to be this, it's going to be that, but it just comes down to, like, what do they actually do? What do they actually do, right? So, and I think a lot of people, too, with, like, the earnings reports and not doing the earnings call, not telegraphing what they're going to do, not projecting the next numbers, right? Just saying, oh, this was our numbers. Stay tuned for the next report. That's really their whole approach. And people are like, oh, I don't agree with that, or oh, I love that they do that. Oh, I hate that, right? There's people on both sides of it. But I just look at it as simply as, if you're holding the stock, the management team has made it abundantly clear that we're not going to telegraph what we're trying to do. Or why do I use the word telegraph? We're not going to go out and publish like, hey, this is our exact plan. We're just going to make moves, and we'll let you know as we make them. And that's it. That's how we're going to do it. And people are like, oh, this is so good. Oh, this is so bad. It's really as simple as, this is what the company is doing. So if you're invested in it, you have to just accept that's the case. That's really how I look at it. And I'm okay with it, personally, right? I understand, some people aren't. You might have doubts. You might want to put your money elsewhere, right? You can do whatever you want at the end of the day. But I think it's as simple as, like, the company's made it clear, like, hey, this is how we're going to go about things. And let's just see how it plays out, right? I think it's kind of the best way to look at it. Can I ask you, do they have to short more because of the upsize? KCR, thanks for being here. Or did the pricing window stay the same, so no need to short more? So, from my understanding, right, I'm still wrapping my head around this, and it gets very complex with the functionality of, like, shorting for this purpose, and then you want to short to hedge if you're buying the bonds. But generally, they're shorting it, like, very in simple terms, generally speaking, shorting it the day it's going to get priced, because you want the conversion value to be lower, because the details of the notes say the initial conversion price of the notes represents a premium of approximately 32.5% of the average price of stock between 1 and 4 p.m. So if you already know, right, so whatever it was, plus 32.5% made it to 28.91. So it's like you want to drive it all the way down so that the conversion price is not too high. And then also, to some extent, the market's like, oh, it's dilution, right? But also, before they can convert the actual notes, it has to treat at 130% of this price right here, right? So the terms are actually nearly similar to the last note, funny enough, right? And if you look at right here, it's kind of almost the same thing to an extent, where it starts rising, drops, started climbing up, same kind of drop, and I think we'll see the same kind of rise afterwards. That's at least my thought. It's not for sure. Anything could happen between now and then, but that's kind of my perspective, how it's going to shake out. And they could short it more. You never know. You just don't know. With any stock, especially GameStop. Let's see. GME should buy AMC. That would be fun. C12, thanks for being here, but I don't know, my friend. I don't know about that one, honestly. Like, I can see the fun side, but I just don't see AMC doing the same things as GameStop, and unfortunately, I just don't see how their businesses align, or AMC is in a financial situation where it would make any sense for GameStop. Buy AMC, no thanks. Yeah, listen, you want to rock and roll with AMC, you can, but personally, I just don't think they're making the right moves over there, unfortunately. And speaking of moves, Ryan Cohen did speak. Another rare occurrence where we hear from Ryan Cohen, we hear his voice, right? So I figured we'll just go through the written statements, right, or so the transcript from the annual meeting. Very short, as expected, right in line with Ryan Cohen's style. So here's what he had to say. And then also, I was able to find from this account what he said last year. So let's look at it year over year and see how the tone kind of shifted. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep this brief and to the point. The first quarter of 2025 was our first profitable first quarter since 2019. As a result of cutting costs, reducing excess inventory, streamlining headcount, closing unprofitable stores, exiting underperforming geographics, and focusing on the core fundamentals of the business. So overall, I read that as there was a lot of little things that we had to put a lot of work in to shift to the place where we are now and need to be. We are focusing on trading cards as a natural extension of our existing business. So making it clear, trading cards are a big part of what we're doing going forwards. The trading card market, whether it's sports, Pokemon, or collectibles, is aligned with our heritage. It fits our trade-in model, it appeals to our core customer base, and it's deeply embedded in physical retail. Spot on right here. This is a very important line because it fits the core business. You have the same type of customers, and also you need to physically go there. It brings people in the stores. Unlike software, it's tactile. Unlike hardware, it has high margin potential, which I love this because they want to push gross margins higher, hopefully over 40% in the coming years. Then you could get operating margin, hopefully to double digits at some point, right? They're just getting into the positive side, so got to take baby steps, right? And then net margin will only get bigger, especially as they're earning interest income to just boost that even higher. It's a logical expansion. Agreed. And having that turn on the board, I think, is fantastic because you have someone who is the CEO of Collectors, which is the parent company of PSA, someone very, very important and having a lot of impact on decisions made at PSA, right on the board of directors. So GameStop can pivot and adjust and be in the know of the potential changes taking place with PSA or just finding ways to further their partnership because they're in connection. Most important, none of this would be possible without the people doing the actual work, our store employees and warehouse teams. They're the ones listing inventory, sweating on the job, serving customers, processing trade-ins, and keeping the business running. So I really like that he's shouting out everyone there. Doesn't have to do that. I know, you could argue, well, of course he says that. Every CEO says this stuff. But it appeared genuine to me. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but even if it's, generic, I guess you could say, or you could argue, I still think it's nice to say, and you should say that as the leader of a company. They're not wasting time in Zoom meetings. They're not in PowerPoint decks. They're on their feet every single day working hard and serving customers, which I think is great because there's so much, we got to do this training, we got to do this, we got to watch this we got to look through this PowerPoint, do that. And it's a lot of nonsense a lot of time, right? I'm sure some of you know from your jobs. I know from, certain jobs I've had in the past from like, all right, and just kind of like just checking boxes here. I think this is a waste of time. Of course there are some trainings that are necessary, don't get me wrong, but basically what he's saying to me, not to me directly, but he's saying in general, in saying they're not wasting time in Zoom meetings, they're not in PowerPoint decks, they're on their feet every single day, working hard and serving customers. We're not going to do nonsense, extra training or this or that just to check boxes, right? We're going to focus on the work. And I can tell you from my time working at Marshall's, it's important. Whenever I had to do stuff on the side, I was like, you got to take this meeting, do that. I'm like, bro, I have so many clothes to put out. I got to put out shoes. I got to check the inventory on this. And I'm like, I just got to get out there and work. So it's like, it slows you down when you have a lot of like this, and this, instead of you're focusing on your day to day. They're the backbone of GameStop. Absolutely. Without hardworking employees, the company doesn't exist. In corporate America, it's totally normal to see excessive executive pay, DEI initiatives that prioritize image over merit, managers managing to Wall Street short-term expectations and analysts, and boards handing out free stock like candy to people who would never buy a share themselves. It's true. All those different things take place. You see overpayment executives. I feel like you see over emphasis on diversity and inclusion and all that different stuff. But while diversity is great, don't get me wrong, I think you got to hire based on the individual. It should be as simple as, hey, I think this person's really qualified for the job. I don't care what you look like, what your like sexual orientation is, or anything like that, or gender, or whatever, right? Who cares? If you're a good employee, you're a good person, you fit the company culture, great, we're going to hire you. It should be as simple as that. That's just my opinion, though. Managers managing to Wall Street's short-term expectations and analysts, very true, that does happen a lot, which I think is also in line with the fact they don't want to provide projections because then they're just like, oh, well, they're not meeting projections. And boards handing out free stock like candy to people who would never buy a share themselves. That happens a lot. How many different companies do you see out there where they have tons of shares these people are compensated with, but you don't ever see them buy it with their own money? That's not how we operate. We're a company that treats shareholder capital as our own because it is, because they are shareholders as well. Warren Buffett once said, turnarounds seldom turn, and he's right. To me, he's saying, hey, it hasn't been easy, but we're powering through. And also I saw some people saying, oh, he's referencing Warren Buffett. They're truly becoming GameStop, Gameshire stop away, or whatever. I always butcher. Gameshire stop away. And I think to an extent, yes. Obviously, I don't think it would be pretty funny actually if they actually went with that name. But I think it's more like, hey, we're gonna focus on acquiring different assets now that our core business is profitable, and also push that more and more towards trading cards. No fancy promises, no roadshows, no pandering. Just a focus on efficiency and long-term alignment with our owners, the shareholders. Thank you for being one. So pretty short and sweet. I liked what he had to say, and now I think we should look at what was said last year and compare. Just kind of see what has changed year over year. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I want to take a moment and discuss the retail business and future of GameStop. With respect to retail operations, we plan to continue reducing costs and focusing on profitability, which we saw them do over the past year. Like, hey, we got to close more locations, we got to lower SG&A, and we got to be profitable. And they've done that. Revenues without profits and prospects of future cash flows are no value to shareholders. So basically, revenue that's not going to be profitable, right? If we're just to boost the top line, say, oh, the top line is holding up well, but the bottom line isn't net green. Right, we don't need that. Revenues without profits and prospects of future cash flows are no value to shareholders. Facts. This means a smaller network of stores with an expanded assortment of higher value items that fit in our trade-in model. So, kind of in a way, this hinted at PSA. I don't know if necessarily they were thinking about it at that point, discussing it in June of last year. Maybe the idea was first starting to spark, right? And it was kind of a hint at that, but maybe not. But they did go ahead and deliver on this, right? So he said it, and he was like, all right, let's do that. Having a strong balance sheet, especially in times of economic uncertainty, has a strategic advantage. You don't think we're in an uncertain economic time now with wars and all these trade deals taking place and creation of money? A lot of craziness going on out there, a lot of craziness. You need a strong balance sheet. While the future is always uncertain, true, the last decade's monetary and fiscal policies, both within the U.S. and globally, are historic anomalies. We got it. Exiting from an ultra-low interest rate environment is likely to have unforeseen reverberating effects across the economy. We'll just skip over that one. As seen with inflation hitting 40-year highs in 2022. As my father always said, actions speak louder than words. We are focused on building shareholder value over the long term. We are not here to make promises or hype things up. We're here to work. Thank you for being a shareholder. I feel like generally speaking there, everything he said, are things they focused on throughout 2024 and into the start of this year. And if that's the same case this year, I feel like given that he specifically mentions the trading card market and how it nicely fits in their model, I feel like they're going to expand upon this more. I'm starting to really think that they're going to, I keep saying Card Stop is like the filler name, maybe they'll call it something else, that maybe they'll start opening like small locations specifically just for cards, and you could go there, you could trade with other people, you could, play trading card games, like events like that, right? Maybe that's a route they could potentially go. Given that he's mentioning how the trading card market nicely coexists with the model, I feel like that's a possibility. But then on the other side of the coin, he says here, like, we had to slim down, right? It's results of cutting costs, streamlining headcount, closing unprofitable stores, exiting underperforming geographies and focus on core fundamentals of the business. So actually, it was the last one where he was saying we need to continue to have a smaller footprint, right? He didn't say anything about a smaller footprint here. No wasting Zoom meetings. So yeah, I don't think it's impossible, to open these other stores, but they'll only do it if they see a route where, hey, we think this will boost profits because there will be people going in there, buying cards, we'll buy cards off other people and sell them online. And then guess what? If that doesn't work, I think the management team has shown, for example, the NFT marketplace, that they're like, hey, all right, that's fine. We'll try CardStop. We'll open some of them, test pilot it. It's not working. All right, we'll wind it down. Another example I can think of is, remember they opened that customer service center in like Florida, and they were hiring a bunch of people for there to provide, good customer service. And then they realized, all right, you know what? I think this is not efficient enough where it's helping us, obviously they still need to provide customer service, but they're like, hey, I think we need to cut this cost out here because we got to pay for the building, we got to pay for all these employees, right? I would imagine they retained some of them, but to some extent, right, they realized like, okay, this just doesn't work, or this is not working with our overall business and how it's functioning day to day. So they moved away from it. Same with the NFT marketplace. So I feel like management team has the confidence to say, okay, if something doesn't work, we're not just going to keep riding it out to, meet Wall Street's expectations because we said we're going to do this, right? It gives them that flexibility to say like, all right, you know what, this isn't working. Let's pivot again. Let's pivot. That's what you got to do sometimes. You can't just go down one road and then just say, all right, I'm never going back. Sometimes you got to retreat a little bit, make a left turn, then make a right. And I feel like that's what they've kind of done over these past few years. People like to point to like, oh, the NFT marketplace was a total failure. No? Did they really lose a lot of money on that? Not that I'm aware of. Not that I've seen in the financial statements. So I feel like if they are going to expand in different ways, right, such as like CardStop locations, just as an example, they're going to do it in a very cost-efficient structure and in a way where like they could pull out easy and they wouldn't have like a massive loss as a result of like going all in and not being truly prepared. So I like what I see here. Let's see what you guys think. GME should buy MC. All I need to do is chill and watch Ryan Cohen cook. Let him cook. That's what they're saying, Wendy. Is it true GME was shorted 76 million shares yesterday? Thanks. Jesse, I don't believe so. So I saw there's like short volume, but you got to keep in mind, I saw something about it briefly. I didn't read enough, but short answer is I don't believe so. And you got to realize, like, just as like short volume, it's a very complex subject. It doesn't just automatically translate to short interest. So just keep that in mind. Pokemon cards are the number one seller. I used to work for retail for XL Brands who MK the Pokemon cards. You won't believe the long lines that may be just for those cards every month. Oh my god. So Omega, thank you for being here. It's funny, like now that GameStop does trading cards, and I would say I've gotten more into cards, right? Like, so I had some cards, I kind of sold them back in 2020, and like I kept a couple, so I always like dabbled in it. Then GameStop getting involved in PSA again and looking at what they have, I'm like, oh, I like football cards, I like this player. It's kind of like I'm mostly like a sports card guy, right? Hockey and football, primarily football, just because I feel like hockey cards don't have as much value. There's not as much demand. But point being, kind of got me back into it, and I'm a very like casual collector. But in being a casual collector, I've started to talk to people about it more, and like more people than I realized that I have in my life. Whether it be coworkers, I have a couple I talk with about it, friends. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize like you collect. Oh, I didn't realize you like rip packs on the weekends sometimes, right? So it's a good point you're making that there's huge lines. I mean, this is just sports cards I'm talking about. That's not even to mention like Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic. So it's low-key like a huge market, right? That's what I think is very or I guess I could say I underestimated the size, like the TAM, right? Total addressable market of cards, whether it's trading cards or sports cards, or probably a combination of both, when I saw GameStop first getting into it. So I see the opportunity here. Bank of Japan decision late Sunday. Dijon, what up? Thanks for being here. Dude, good point, because that'll be, pretty interesting to see. Are they going to cut rates? Are they going to raise rates? I'm not even sure. Probably, if anything, they're going to take it about raising, right? But to prevent their currency from just losing more value. But I'll be sure to look at that. And I haven't looked at what's going on with Bank of Japan, or international interest rates rather, in a long time, to be honest with you. So I don't want to pretend like I know exactly the specifics right now. But I will be looking at what happens with that decision, and that'll probably be kind of gets me to read about it a little bit more again, because it's been a while. One of my fears is the trading card thing is a fad, specifically Pokemon. John, honestly, I don't think so, man. It's, a fair thing you could say, but Pokemon's been around forever. I know when I was a kid, like, all the Pokemon cards I have are from when I was really young. And I feel like it was really big at that time. And while maybe at certain times, right now it's a little bit busier or more popping than it was like a few years ago. I can't say that for sure. I'm not 100% sure about that, but point being, I feel like it's always stayed relevant for like the past couple decades. So I don't really see a world where like trading card demand completely goes away. Sure, it might go in cycles, be busier at other times more or less than others. But I think overall it's here to stay. And then let's say Pokemon is kind of in a down period. Maybe Magic is popping off. Maybe the football cards market has more demand. And with sports cards, the most valuable ones are always rookie cards. So there's always new rookies every year. So I feel like there's always a market out there. PNP D&D making a comeback. All right. I don't know either about Bank Jameer, just the date. No, you're good, man. Yeah, no, it is a macro event, though, that does impact things because, there's the yen carry trade. I haven't heard about that in a while. But I wonder if we'll ever see something with that again because what's gone on for a long time is Japan's interest rates have been in the toilet like forever, and the yen has just consistently lost value, right? Its conversion price is just lower and lower, so you get less dollars for every time you convert the yen. So with that being the case, like big money, you kind of realize like, hey, why don't we go borrow from the Bank of Japan, borrow yen, convert to dollars, and then either as of late, as in the past couple of years, just hold it in treasuries over here, earn like 4%, turn around, pay it back, keep the profit, right? Convert back to yen, pay it back. And maybe even, how about the stock market, right? You could theoretically put in the stock market, get pretty big gains to go out and pay back the very low interest rates in yen. And also the conversion rate has been favorable for the US dollar for so long. So if the yen gets stronger, could theoretically create a problem, right? I got to look into that again. I remember when the yen carry trade was coming out, I was reading about it a lot. It's so hard to remember everything. Like, it's like you read about it, you write it down, and you really start to get it, and then the next crazy thing happens in the financial world, and then all of a sudden, you're like, damn it, now I gotta circle back to this and figure this out. And what was going on with that? But that's just how it goes. So, see, in theory, Ryan Cohen could just keep repeating this process, building up the cash, but at the same time, the stock price goes nowhere. Not good for retail. UK Dave, thanks for being here. So, to an extent, that is kind of true, but also like I think it kind of raises the floor. I have like mixed opinions on that argument, but they just have so much cash that it gets to the point where nearly their whole market cap will be represented in cash, and they could just earn so much interest. And yeah, what buying Bitcoin has allowed them to do, essentially, and make Bitcoin part of their investment policy and strategy is it's opened the door for them to do these 0% convertible note offerings, and evidently, there's demand. The proposed offering was 1.75 billion. The priced one, 2.25, and not to mention it could be upsized. I really honestly think it probably will be upsized that extra 450 million. So they probably wound up raising 2.7 billion here. So yeah, in theory they can keep doing this, and like the share price won't really go anywhere until it does. Until they start buying other stocks, they're buying more Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's price is going up. They're buying out another company, right? So yes, technically, the share price might not go anywhere. It could just sit in this 20 to 30 range for a while. But if they're stacking cash, I'm totally okay with it because they just have so much opportunity. And one of my favorite quotes, great moments are born from great opportunity. And what GameStop has here tonight is a great opportunity from Miracle on Ice. Great movie. Friday afternoon espresso. Espresso is so good. So underrated. Just have a quick shot of it, like, boom, back to work. Let's see what else we got. Last time, Bank of Japan increase, August 2024, huge market swings. Yeah, that was the unraveling of the yen carry trade, so definitely worth keeping an eye on. We can see like finance, the conversion rate. Is the core business now a distraction? Randy, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I wouldn't call it a distraction. I think it's more so we got it profitable. We're going to push further into the trading card game, but also we're going to focus on our investment policy and where we want to utilize this cash. And I'm fine with them not rushing, right? Because I would rather them take their time, seek out the right opportunities, do their necessary due diligence, than rushing to an acquisition or rushing into buying shares of a company and it doesn't work out, right? Because they're rushing to utilize the capital. Whereas, when they're trying something new, such as like they try the NFT marketplace, that's different because they're deploying like very minimal amount of capital. Whereas like if they rush into buying out a company that they don't fully have like the necessary due diligence on, they don't fully feel good about integrating into the business, and then it makes the core business unprofitable, that would be like a major like regression of like all the progress they made with the cost cutting. So I don't think it's a distraction. I think it's more so, okay, like we kind of got this running good. We got this to where we want it to be. Let's keep, of course, still looking to make the changes. We see one location is just falling off in profitability. It's just not seeing the same foot traffic because other stores nearby closed down maybe. Whatever the case, it's okay. We got to cut out that one particular location. And okay, we see an opportunity here to cut costs. Great, we'll do it. But I think for the most part, there's not much more room to cut costs. There's still some, right? Because also keep in mind when you look at year over year, like later this year versus last year, you're going to see that the French, Canadian, German, what else? Italy operations, all out of them. So it's for the most part, I feel like the cost cutting is done, but it doesn't mean they're going to just like forget about the core business. They're still going to operate it to the fullest extent, the most efficient extent, and they're going to say, all right, we have a lot of cash, let's use it how we want, right? That's at least how I see it. They technically can only invest up to 40% of that cash unless they want to actually become an investment company. 40% of their assets mean. Dijon, thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. I didn't realize that was a specific rule, so I'll have to dig into that more. But that makes sense, right? And I wonder if they do rebrand to that, right? I've kind of thought maybe they'll change it to like GME Holding Company, like the parent, like when you go on Yahoo Finance and you look up GameStop, right? Maybe they change it to be like GME Holding Company as like the name, and then like it says like GME Holding Corp or something, or maybe they don't call it that, they call it something else, GameStop Holding Corp, or they just pick a GameStop, right? They just pick a fun name, whatever. I don't think they're actually gonna pick that name, but they pick like they change the name to be like a holding company, and then GameStop is one thing that's held underneath it, Bitcoin's held underneath it, something else they buy out, whether it's shares, a whole other company, and whatever else is all underneath it as, just one giant umbrella because they have all that cash. And then they'll have their treasuries, they'll have just a lot of different stuff going on, and GameStop will just be like one segment. Kind of how Berkshire Hathaway started, for those who aren't aware. Berkshire Hathaway was like a small textile company, and it was something along the lines of like Buffett was buying shares and trying to push for changes, but like they just weren't listening, they weren't about it. So he got a little salty and he was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to buy out your whole company. I'm just going to keep buying shares until I'm the majority owner and I'll take control. So he kind of did it out of spite, but ultimately that gave him full control. Then he said, okay, well, they have extra cash. What should I use? I'm going to start, investing in things I would invest in. And that's kind of how Berkshire Hathaway was born. And now, it's obviously not like an active textile company, not that I'm aware of, but they own all kinds of companies, right? They own like Geico. Obviously, they own like a lot of public stocks, like they're big holders of Apple. That wasn't even Buffett himself that bought that. That was other advisors, part of the team, he had said at one point. And then, Coca-Cola is obviously another big one. But overall, they have a lot of publicly traded companies and companies that are private, not even privately traded, but just entirely owned by Berkshire as like the overarching firm. So I feel like that's kind of what's going to happen over the next couple of years. I feel like at some point they're going to rebrand. Not GameStop itself, but like the technical owner of GameStop, if that makes sense. Like they're going to make it like a holding company on top that holds GameStop, Bitcoin, and then whatever else. But we'll see, right? Time will have to tell. Bitcoin dividend drive the shorts crazy. Randy, I don't know the specifics of that, like in terms of how a Bitcoin dividend would play out, but I honestly don't think they're going to do any kind of dividend, whether it's like cash, Bitcoin, something else, right? People who used to say like NFT dividend a while ago. I don't really see them doing that. I feel like they really want to just retain the capital and find ways to deliver shareholder value. So if you're paying out dividends, that's more like a value stock play. That's kind of saying like, hey, we don't see anywhere else to put this money to grow the valuation or grow the business itself. So we're just going to start paying out shareholders, which I think maybe one day they do it, but I just think right now they want to just keep everything and say, okay, let's utilize this to the best of our ability over the next decade. I'm not saying they're going to wait a decade to do anything, but they're going to keep the money available for use. See, Bank of America. Hey, could be, man. Could be. You never know. I read it in our proxy or the last 2 documents. Thanks, bro. All right, I'm going to write that down. About the 40% of assets holding company. And then GameStop is already a holding company, no? Never mind. No, you're good, Jorge. No way. No way. No. It's all good, bro. Don't worry. But what is the risk of Bitcoin holders from quantum computing breaking the blockchain security? Randy, so that's like, honestly, when I, as a holder of Bitcoin for several years now, and someone who's read about it for a while, that's the one thing, I will admit, that I feel like I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. That's arguably my biggest concern on a long-term basis of the potential problem for Bitcoin, right? But I feel like if quantum computing gets that far along where they could crack the blockchain and, funds aren't secure and absolute chaos happens and Bitcoin price tanks to like $100, something insane, I feel like we're going to probably, if we have that kind of technology just out there being used, I feel like we're probably going to have even crazier problems in the world. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But I've also heard from like the bull side of Bitcoin, it's like, well, the miners will adapt based on the level of quantum computing, because if it's so much power being used, then the miners will adapt. You'll need so much more hash power to mine the next Bitcoin. So essentially, like, I'm probably not describing it right. Look into it further, please. Don't just take it from me. But generally, how I understood it was the miners or the blockchain itself, right, and Bitcoin itself will adapt to what's currently happening in the world because of the structure, right? That's like the simplest term. But I do think that's probably the single biggest risk for Bitcoin, the possibility of that happening in some shape or form. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And I also feel like, worst case, there could be a fork. I mean, I don't know about that, but it is worth like keeping in the back of the mind, but I don't see it as like a very like prevalent issue. But also knowing GameStop, I don't see them going like, especially because they didn't use the last full 1.5 billion that they already raised. They just aren't going full Bitcoin treasury, right? I think the world's starting to kind of see that now. And the other thing, I forgot to look at the yen. What's yen to US dollar? Right now. Maybe it's US dollar to yen I meant to do. But what was that one account? Was it Bitcoin Therapist? Is it? It's actually not coming up. That's a funny name, Bitcoin Therapist. And listen, I don't know, like everyone's like, listen, this guy got out of GameStop. So be it, right? So be it. Who cares? It's fine. It's not for everybody, but Bitcoin started to be wild. Where was they said? Where is it? Volatility's coming. Where is it? He just said something about GameStop earlier today. Ryan Cohen resharing a post calling him retarded might just be what I needed to restore my confidence in GameStop. That's pretty funny. Assuming Ryan Cohen is able to upsize his converts to the max, GameStop will be sitting on approximately $9 billion in cash with current $10 billion market cap. This is retarded insane. Never been a more clear time to buy the bottom if you trust the board to buy Bitcoin. So, listen, I think, this guy's going to do whatever he's going to do. Just remember, everyone out there, these are just people on the internet. He can do whatever he wants. So, like, I do think it is funny, though, like, the memes about him and everything, because he was all like, Bitcoin's so great, or GameStop's so great, but no, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, I can't do it. And that's fine. I think, he's like, wait, what the heck? Like, they're actually raising so much money. What is going on here? I feel like we have to remember, as individuals, not everyone's followed the GameStop story this whole time. So some people are still, like, wrapping their head around it, seeing, like, what the heck is going on here? This is crazy. So it's fine. Not everyone's going to want to hold GameStop. That's just the reality of the world. That's really how I look at it. But I just thought it was funny that he's like, wait, they actually have so much billion. They actually have so much cash. Like, what? This is crazy. Went to all the holders. Oh, that's something else. But it just shows you, like, this is just kind of like an average person in, like, the financial world who's following GameStop from afar, just kind of keeping up with it, just like, what is going on here, right? Like, isn't that crazy? So, yeah, but it's fine. He can do what he wants. I don't mind. I don't have anything against the guy. That's really, I think, the best way to look at it. But, I also understand, though, that if he wants to, he would start to talk crap about GameStop. Listen, when you talk crap about a company that a lot of people like and believe in, you're going to hear it back, right? You're going to get responses. So that's just the nature of the internet. That's really how I look at it. But I do wonder, going back to my page here, made me think of it. I'm like, huh. And by the way, follow if you don't already. Post on here and there what's going on with GameStop, some of my thoughts. But I wonder if we'll get more insider buys. We're around the prices, right? April 3rd and April 10th last time. What did insiders buy last time? April 3rd, April 10th. So April 3rd, right here, right? They bought right around this price last time, April 10th, all right? Alan Edel. Right around here, right? 25, so he paid even a little bit more. It's not impossible for insiders to buy more shares. I mean, looking at how they've done it, my best guess was like maybe just Larry Chang buys some shares. Where was I? Alan Adel has kind of just on an annual basis grab a chunk here and there. Ryan Cohen every year or other year. Larry's been pretty consistent with his buys. Like, he's done pretty small ones and like every 6 months. 6 months or so on average, approximately, roughly, not exactly, but maybe we get another insider buy, though, or several, because they say, all right, well, this is the exact same price we were at last time. We believe in what we're going to do. Why not pick up some shares here? So maybe that's what's being hinted at in what he's saying here, right? Just focus. What did he say? That's not how we operate. We're a company that treats shareholder capital as their own, because it is. So hinting at a buy, not exactly, but maybe, right? It's always a possibility. It's always a possibility. But regardless, people say, oh, they didn't buy shares. Okay, well, Ryan Cohen already has so many. He has a lot of vested interest. And people also say, like, oh, Larry only has 83,000. Alan only has 572,000. Think about what you're saying. It's just like how people say, oh, Bitcoin, GameStop only has 500 million in Bitcoin. Only 500 million? Only 83,000 shares? Like, these are huge numbers. Keep that in mind, right? You got to keep that in mind. It's like, what? What is 83,000 shares? And, remember, they're really buying their own money for the most part. 83,000 times 22 right now. It's 1.8 million. It's a pretty good amount. That's a pretty good amount. It would be nice for more, right? Being on the board of directors and as wealthier individuals, but at the same time, it's still a lot. It's still enough where you're going to care. And also keep in mind, all these guys have a history together from the time at Chewy. Larry Chang being one of the first people to give the first person willing to give Ryan Cohen capital when he was trying to raise capital. Apparently over 100 people said no to him. They're like, this is stupid. You're not going to be able to compete with Amazon. You're just selling pet stuff on the internet. Ryan Cohen's like, no. This is personalized. And I'm not going to give up. And finally Larry was like, this guy's got something here. I'm going to go for it. And guess what? It worked out, right? They sold it for a huge amount. And Alan Adel was one of the first employees. And also I think people forget, and I also forgot myself at one point in time until I look back and go, oh yeah. So when Ryan Cohen first joined the board, right, December 2020, before he took out the old board members completely, and then he brought in Larry and a couple others, in the mid part of 2021, Alan Adel joined Ryan Cohen in December, so right away. So they've, like, Alan Adel, you don't hear from him as much, but I do, and you see Larry Chang, I think he did like a live stream today, so he's more active, like on Twitter and the internet. Alan Adel's more low-key, but Alan Adel is, honestly, I think, more involved in GameStop than Larry. Like, Larry's probably advising on certain decisions, and they run things by him as a board member. But also, if I'm not mistaken, Alan Adel is not chief executive officer and chairman. I actually made a mistake on that. It's funny, of all the people that saw this, only one person noticed, or two people, like, hey, Alan Adel's not the CEO. And I was like, well, it's too late to change that. But where's the board corporate governance? Yeah, so Alan Adel is the lead independent director. So Ryan Cohen's the chairman, of course, alongside being CEO, but Alan Adel's the lead independent director. So he's essentially the number 2 on the board. He's like the right-hand man for Ryan Cohen. And then we know Yang Zhu is ready to move on. She has a bigger role. I forgot the name of the company, somewhere internationally. So down to just 5. And then Jim Grube has been around. Is it Grube? I think it's Grube. He's been around quite a while as well. And then Nat Turner, Nathaniel to be exact, of course, is the CEO of Collectors, which of course is the parent company of PSA. So that's the current board. That's the current situation. Unfortunately, Nat Turner doesn't own any shares as of the last filing, right? So he had to file a Form 3 when he officially came on the board. Where was it? Somewhere down here, right? So I got a whole crazy bunch of everything going on here. And also, people always forget about this. Like, I feel like this is going to get added to GameStop at some point. Their grading process, you're going to be able to grade old games. Can you open this? Wada Games. Okay, there we go. So just go to wadagames.com. So essentially, it's another part of Collectors, which again, the parent company PSA. Another segment of it is Wada Games, and essentially what we do, your graded media, loose cartridges, complete in box, and sealed media, whatever you want to submit, we'll grade it. Wada is the destination of professional video game and media grading certification, bringing clarity and confidence to the process. Learn how to submit your media, games, and cartridges for grading below, and start pursuing your passion today. So, see, it's a little bit more specific, right? If you go through the submission process, like, you got to be very, like, obviously there's a lot of, like, contingencies, like, all right, it's from the Xbox, it's, I don't know, MLB, something like that. Slugfest, right? I don't even know. I'm just going through random ones. Standard, prototype. So you got to give a lot more specifics. So I haven't actually gone through this before. But my point being, I don't think GameStop's out of this yet because you want to just get their feet under them, get situated, get the employees used to doing the grading process, make it real simple. And then I think they're going to add this at some point as part of what they're doing because it's, again, very much in line with their customer base and just the business model as a whole and the idea of going more into collectible sales and trying to get better margins from focusing on collectibles. In this case, it's really grading. Maybe they also start saying, hey, well, we'll buy it off you, then they can go resell it on their website, right? So they're kind of going into like the retro gaming space, kind of to an extent, right? It's kind of like another thought I had there, but see how it shakes out. What is the risk to Bitcoin if Ripple XRP gets out of the courts? Randy, honestly, I don't worry about XRP. I like to mess with people who hold XRP. I call it scam RP. It's not actually a scam, but I just don't see XRP replacing Bitcoin. I think they're very different things. I think XRP is really about efficiency and like moving money between institutions, specifically financial institutions. But the thing I always think back to, no one can quite clarify for me. So if you're an XRP bull, let me know why I'm wrong. I just don't see why any bank, they'll have dollars, they'll convert to XRP, make the movement of funds, XRP from Wells Fargo to XRP at JP Morgan, but then JP Morgan could just immediately convert it back to cash. Why would either institution ever want to hang on to XRP? That's the thing I can't wrap my head around. And also, that doesn't have the same functionality as Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is really about being 100% decentralized, and the miners are what make the network function, and it's all about, to me, it boils down to supply of the US dollar versus the rate of creation and supply of Bitcoin. So that's where my head's at on that. The gap needs to be filled on the upside. Bijan, let's see it. I'll be ready for it. But I think it'll happen. Now, Ryan Cohen buy is always a nice boost, so could be hopeful for that. Let's see, what do we got here in the news? So yeah, they announced $2.25 billion and 0% convertible loans, up from $1.75 billion, causing GME shares to drop 22.5%, losing about $3 billion in market cap. So their current market cap, right? What is it? And also, let's check the current ratio. It was like 8, I'm pretty sure, but I'll double check it. So current market cap today is like 9.9 billion. So when you look at their last report, which we just got literally earlier this week, their cash was 6.3 billion. So you take 6.3 billion, and now you add another 225 or 2.25 billion. And then I'm honestly thinking they're gonna, like, if there was demand enough where they oversold it, essentially, because it was 500 million more than the 1.75 billion, I would imagine, just like last time, the buyers are gonna upsize it, right? As it discloses here, they have the right to the date on which the notes are first issued, up to an additional 450 million aggregate principal amount of notes can be purchased, meaning they give the company another 450 million. I'm going to go ahead and assume that happens. That would put them at nearly 9 billion in cash. 9 billion in cash, which means stock goes down to 10% more, right? Goes to $20. They're literally trading at 1-to-1 cash to market cap. And by the way, this is a profitable company. Think about how insane that is. And some will say, well, they're not using the cash, and having cash is great, but guess what? If they do nothing for the next year, they just ponder what they want to do next, which I think they're going to do something. I really think they're going to do something. At the very least, like buy more Bitcoin throughout the course of 2025 on a semi-consistent basis or in chunks here or there. I really think they're going to do that. And then they just have opportunity. And if they don't see anything in the next year or so, acquisition-wise, they don't feel ready to buy publicly traded companies, okay, fine. They're going to earn a ton of interest. Even if the Fed cuts rates, they're still going to earn a ton of interest. And we know the business is pretty much going to be profitable from here on out. It seems very evident to me, at least, because when you look at the fact that their operating loss included, right? So the operating loss was 10.8 million, but that included 35.5 million of impairment charges. If it wasn't for that, the adjusted operating income was 27.5. And you go ahead and look at what their margins have looked like. Where are we? Gotta update these charts too, by the way. I'll do that right after this. Look at what their margins were last year. Their operating margin last year was negative 5.7%. Excluding the impairment charges, the operating margin was more like what, 1% or something? So you might go, it's only 1%. Look, Q1 is their weakest quarter in terms of operating margin when you look all across the board here. So if Q1 is already 1% or whatever it is, it's in the net green though. You don't think Q2 and Q3 will be as well? Q4, it's nearly a given, just given that the seasonality of the business, which I think also in scaling down and focusing more on trading cards, they'll be less seasonal. I think over the next couple of years, it won't be as much of a case where the business is very heavily dependent on Q4 as it is now to some extent. But it's not also going to be like, all the quarters will be the same. I think Q4 will always be a very prominent quarter for them. But I think the other quarters are going to get a little stronger, and it's going to kind of start to balance out as time rolls on. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. But then you look at this, you compare it to where we are right here. Where are we? Get more coffee. So while operating loss was technically negative 1.5%, really it would have been more like positive roughly 1% had they not had the impairment charges in. Also, net margin 6.1%. So pretty significant jump overall, right, from last year. And also look at gross margin, 34.5, back over 30%. Love that. I think they got to consistently stay above 30% and work their way to 40. When you look at someone like Macy's, if I'm not mistaken, I think their gross margin's like 40%, right? Just using another random company. Can we pull it up on Yahoo Finance real quick? Just, as a bit, not that Macy's is the best company to compare to, right? Or let's look at Best Buy. Best Buy is probably a better example. So let's see what theirs is for fun. Let's see. Pretty significant dividend. Has been struggling. I haven't looked at Best Buy in a long time. But Best Buy is probably like a decently good, and it's not going to perform that great for the past several years. Comparison to GameStop in terms of like when you want to look at like what do their margins look like, right? Just for perspective, I think it's always good to look at competition or just the general industry to just gain understanding. And so there, does it tell you the gross margin? Okay, gross profit, right? Okay, well, if you know revenue is 41 billion, gross profit was about 9 billion. That's like a 25% margin, right? Just using quick numbers here, so that's not even that great. So it's better than that. And then let's see, what is their net? Okay, their profit margin, 2.3%, right? That's their net margin, and the operating is 3.74. So they're on track to be stronger than Best Buy, actually, right? Another one that might have it. Macro trends. I've got on here in a long time. Is this it? think this is it. All right, well, maybe it doesn't want to load. All right, whatever the case, I think margin's got to keep moving in the right direction. Is really all I'm trying to say here. But let's see, XRP, GME, can't get it right. Thanks for being here, brother. I can agree with GME. XRP, I don't know, man. Not for me, not for me. I am like Michael Saylor in the sense of like, there is no second best. What do you mean second best? Right? I just hold Bitcoin. I used to have some Ethereum, but honestly, I said, why hold Ethereum when I can just hold Bitcoin? I like Bitcoin the most. So that's the route I've gone. It doesn't mean I actually hate the other cryptocurrencies or don't want any other currencies to succeed. I just see Bitcoin as the biggest name in the space, and just I see its true value, and I feel like I have the most understanding of it, where I feel the best in holding it. I'd rather just do that. And if any other crypto is succeeding, it's because Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole is succeeding. So if XRP succeeds, Bitcoin will succeed to an extent. Add Bitcoin in 650 million in inventory, and it's 1-to-1 now. Pat, good point. Thanks for being here, brother. Yeah, it's a great point. If you add in the Bitcoin in the inventory, they literally already are trading at 1-to-1 at a $22 price point, which maybe Ryan Cohen or other members of the board look at that and go, maybe I should pick up some shares, right? Nat Turner, looking at you, brother. Maybe you should pick up a few shares. You know, I get it. You're involved in collectors, and maybe GameStop's just kind of like a side thing for you, but you can pick up a little, man. Right, that's what I wanted to show over here is Form 3. Where is it? Oh, look at this. I have it right here. I forgot. Look at Best Buy's margins. So this is from a while ago, right? Best Buy, full year numbers though. Their operating margin as percentage of revenue, 3.6%. So as high as 5.9% range. So GameStop's on track to already be in line with this, and they're going to try and push higher. And then SG&A as a percentage of revenue is a little bit lower, but their cost of goods is probably higher. So gross profit, wow, only 22% right here. Yeah, so it looks like it's like floated in the 20s for a while. So GameStop's gross margin is already better. Then look at someone like Walmart. Did I write down the percentages? So I did SG&A and cost of sales, but cost of sales 75%. That means what? Their gross margin's like 25%. So I feel like they're looking pretty decent in the margins department, but they just got to keep pushing forward. So, but this is what I wanted to show you. Nat Turner's Form 3 filing. So he joined the board, what was it, November 18th? So no shares, but he had to file because he's now on the board. Let me finish this real quick so I'm not holding it. I love a good espresso. He's got nothing but joined the board on the 18th. Is he getting any shares? Let's see. Board from 5 to 6 members, going back to 5 because Yang Zhu is, that's her name, right? Yeah, Yang Zhu is on the way out. Appointed Nathaniel Turner, aka Nat, as a director of the company with a term expiring at the company's 2025 annual meeting, which we revoted. He's back. Not surprised there. Mr. Turner was not appointed to any committees of the board, and there are no arrangements or understandings between Mr. Turner and any other person pursuant to which he was elected as director. Mr. Turner will not receive any compensation for serving as director. Okay, so he's not getting shares, right? That's what I'm reading here. Let's keep going. So it'd be nice for him to pick up some shares. Look, I get it. He's probably got a good amount of shares in Collectors, parent company of PSA. And, you know, if GameStop's sending in cards to PSA, it's good for GameStop, but also obviously it's good for Collectors. So that's probably how he's looking at it. So I'm not necessarily expecting him to buy shares, but it would be nice if he picked up some. But again, he still has vested interest in the success of GameStop, because if GameStop's sending in a lot of cards and doing well, in turn, PSA is doing a lot of well. So the company entered into collaboration with Collectors Holdings through its professional sports authenticator, aka PSA, whereby the company would become an authorized PSA dealer, and PSA would provide authentication and grooming services for trading cards through select company stores across the United States. Mr. Turner is the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Collectors. Mr. Turner also owns up to 10% equity interest in PSA. There we go, vested interest. And has been awarded additional unvested equity compensation awards at Collectors, which are subject to forfeiture if certain performance conditions are not satisfied. Okay, so another reason that leads me to think maybe he's not going to buy shares, but he cares about the success of GameStop with the collecting game and trading card grading, because if he meets certain milestones at PSA, he's going to get additional compensation or ownership in the company, right? We don't know the specifics. So how could you do that? You could have GameStop facilitating cards being sent in, right? So that's a good thing there for him. Since the beginning of the collaboration, the approximate dollar value of the transactions between the company and PSA pursuant to the collaboration agreement was $1.53 billion. Wait, let me read the transactions. Okay, so it was $1.53 million from October to November, right? That's kind of what they're saying. On November 18th, the company issued a press release announcing election of Mr. Turner, copy attached to exhibit blah, blah, blah. So also keep in mind, we look at this, it's like, hey, it hasn't even been a full year of the trading card stuff. So they're still probably working out the logistics of that, some growing pains, I'm sure, here or there, things they got to figure out. You don't truly know, no matter how much you plan and prepare for a business move of any kind or adjustment to the business, you don't truly know how it's going to go until you're like actually thrown in the fire, so to speak. Like, okay, well, we got to make this more efficient. Oh, we got to have the cards shipped to PSA faster. We got to send less cards to save on shipping costs. We got to make sure we have like a FedEx premium account, right? That the cards always get signed for. I don't know, all these different little things that they'll have to learn through the process. And again, to anyone who's out there thinking like, oh, why would any major collector want to be bothered, going through GameStop to grade the cards? They're right. Their major collectors aren't going to go through GameStop to grade their cards because they're major collectors. They've been in the game a while. They're probably going direct to PSA, and that's fine. But there's plenty of people like myself who are casual collectors. Even a guy on my job I talked to, shout out to him. He's a homie. He's into the game. So we started talking about grading cards a lot. I was like, oh, GameStop could do it. So he wound up bringing a bunch of cards. And he told me, like, today, he's like, I think I'm going to pick them up today. They came in. I got the email, but he's like, I didn't open it. I want to get there, and when I open it, I want to find out what my grades are. I don't want to look ahead of time. So, and he's got a whole bunch of cards. But, I wouldn't say he's like a major collector, but he's definitely not an amateur collector like myself. So I feel like, even people in the middle are like, you know what, let me go through GameStop. Why not? It's a pretty simple process. Let's give it a go. So I feel like it's for the average collector and the new collector. The major collectors are always going to go direct to PSA. It just makes sense. 119 million in receivables and 104.8 million in prepaid inventory. Hey, they're literally chilling. PD with 4 new wells with upgrades to 225, no debt with plenty of cash. It's 64,000 in interest by earning cash in the bank, or 64 million, I think you meant. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of cash, and not to mention all the new cash they got. So it's crazy. Let's see, and it's already 1-to-1. Can the bond buyers use the future shares as locates for short positions? Randy, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that would be the case, right? And I feel like it's the most logical where there's a lot of demand, right? Because, if there's not institutions buying GameStop for so long, but then just buying these bonds, you would think they have something to do with that, right? But we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure because also from an institution's perspective, they're okay. And what they've been doing with MicroStrategy this whole time, let's buy it. We have very little downside risk because we'll get the money back. Worst case scenario, things don't work out. Sure, maybe we lost on opportunity cost for a few years. The money was doing nothing, but we got our money back. So be it. We didn't have to pay any interest, right? Or we didn't earn any interest, but at the end of the day, we got our money back. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, it works out. It's great. Conversion terms are met. Let's convert to shares, and now we're in the green. But the twist is GameStop could be like, hey, actually, here's some cash back. You chose to convert. I'm giving you cash back rather than shares. So another thing worth keeping in mind. But I think that's pretty much all I got for today. It was a nice surprise, though, I will say. I got to add that on the sheet here of the new, where did I have it? The new note deal, the pricing of it, right? So we're going to have to add it right here. We'll add that for now. Whoop. We'll leave that. Oh, yeah, we can just do this. Where are we? All right. Well, we'll do this, actually. By the way, if you guys are curious, this app is called Obsidian. Keep giving them free ads. Maybe we got to hit them up. Be like, hey, partnership. I'll refer people. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know the deal. I think they're just like open source, but not add color. We'll just do paste. Paste. There we go. Delete. And there we go. We have the details of the newest offer. And there we go. We have the next details of the newest offer. Boom. All right, we'll get that sorted out. We'll make it green, keep it consistent. Original offering was, make a note, 1.75. I'll just put June 12th, 2025. Make it green. Put a little note out here. Add card. Original offering was for 1.75 billion. And then once we get the filing that it's entirely completed, which probably sometime next week, I'd imagine probably towards the end of next week. Once we get that, then we'll know for sure if they did choose, the buyers of these notes to exercise the right to purchase an additional 450 million, and if that's the case, they'll have raised 2.7 billion. If 450 million, if additional 450 million notes issued, buyers choosing to, what is it, initial beginning notes in the first issue, to add more within 13 days. All right, well, we'll fix it up later, but point being, would be the total would be 2.7 billion raised. Crazy world we live in. Crazy world that you could do this now. And really, it's like MicroStrategy changed the game with it, right? Well, like them or hate them or whatever you think of them. They changed the game with the 0% convertible note offerings, right? There's nobody really doing that out there. And who wanted to lend money for 0%? Game changer. It really is a game changer. It's crazy. So, and this one was this here. So these are the share offerings, right? The share offering summary, which we have more up here. Oh, the same thing twice. Put this up here. All right, yeah, okay. Cleaning up my sheet. I got so much different stuff going on. And by the way, I always keep this here. I remember the tinfoil. Remember all the nonsense that goes on with this stock. Every time you're like, what the heck is this going on? Just remember, a lot of craziness here. A lot of craziness. I want it to be okay, close enough, but here this is March 27, 2023 convertible note offering. But yeah, anything else you guys got? Chat, how are we feeling? I feel like so corny every time I say that, but I'll do it for fun. Why not? And that's what people do, right? Chat. So, and I appreciate you guys in the chat. Don't get me wrong. While I'm joking around being like, hey, chat. I appreciate you guys very much for being here. So if anyone's got anything else before we wrap up, see what you got to say. Tuesday, the offering is done 17th. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. What is it? Sniftix? Did I say that right? Hopefully. But I'll be on the lookout for that. And guess what? We'll update the sheet when the time comes, right? So a lot of stuff going on this year, right? And then I still don't know what the deal is with this Sultan guy. I think he just like met him once. Maybe Ryan Cohen's like, this guy's a bozo. And keep in mind, they've talk about the little things, right? Because that's the whole thing with GameStop. There's no like big grand, like they've done this to them that. I think they've just done a lot of little things right, and I get it. That's not exciting. That's why it's not for everyone, right? Everyone's got to do what they want. Be in it, don't be in it. I don't care. Do whatever you want at the end of the day. That's what life's all about, right? Freedom. So they hired for retail supply chain, head of omnichannel engineering, motion designer. Not sure what the deal is with that, right? They also did software engineers, which, that could be a lot of different things. So I'm not thinking anything. That's the most recent one that Ryan Cohen tweeted about. So these are all the ones that he had posted about over the past year. But, even like these small things, like head of omnichannel engineering, retail supply chain, just doing the little things, right? You need people who have experience in these roles to make the little changes necessary and identify, hey, we can save on costs here, right? Like a story, I'll leave you guys with this. A story that an old manager told me when I was working at Marshall's, working my way up. I was trying to learn from him a lot. He basically said, like, to think about what the corporate does and how they go about things, you got to realize that, because they would ship us like all these bags, right? All these plastic bags. And the amount of like the size of the box was like this, and he realized that he's like one time then they made it smaller, and he basically found out it's like just going from like this. We'll do the full visual. Get me in full screen. Going from like this to like this in terms of the size of the box is such a minimal change, right? Look at this deck, this dope ass deck of cards, Star Wars deck of cards. It'd be like if you're selling millions of these and you just make it like a couple centimeters like smaller, and in doing that the weight would go down, and then like the cost of making it would go down by a couple pennies, but then you just scale that up to like thousands and thousands, millions and millions. Like it makes such a difference. So you need people like in the right roles to identify like these really really small changes that like seem so minor, but really like when you scale it over a long period of time, it's like okay, there's merit to it here. So that's all I got for you guys. I think we'll leave it there. Grab some dinner soon. Sultan bought the convertible bonds. That's my view. It could be, man. It could be. I feel like maybe the first set, and I saw something about it being international a while back. So maybe, I don't remember, but also people were saying that was just like a technical term. So not necessarily international buyer. So I feel like maybe he bought some of them, right? Or maybe Ryan Cohen was thinking initially when he met with him, like, hey, let's make sure before we do this that we know there's at least one solid buyer out there, right? I would imagine too, even before this one, he's probably been having conversations, and from my understanding, these type of notes, right? Take this with a grain of salt, look into it deeper. They tend to find a buyer, like GameStop or whoever's offering the notes, kind of figure out a situation with a buyer prior to going through and offering them, and that's also why we're able to see demand come in so quickly. But also I think part of it is, someone wants these bonds, right? And you could argue, it's to basically provide future locates for their shorts. They want exposure to the long side of the stock. You could debate that part of it, but ultimately, like, there are people out who, at the bottom line is, there are people out there who want the bonds, right? So we'll see how it shakes out. I'll be live again next Friday, same time. Always try to start around 5, but of course today I got stuck at work. So realistically, guys, it's usually gonna be like 5 or 5:15 to keep it real with you. But I'll always start as soon as I can Friday afternoons, and drop a video here or there. Got anything bouncing around my skull I want to share, I'll do that. But next Friday, I'll be live. Maybe something crazy happens next week, or I'm just feeling it, and I'll be like, all right, let's run up another stream. So you could turn on notifications if you feel like it, subscribe, drop a like, I'd appreciate it. And yeah, I'll leave it there for today. They got a lot of cash to work with, and this story is far from over. This story is so far from over. Another wild twist to the GameStop story, just raising capital left and right, convertible bonds. All right, you want to give us money for 0% interest? We'll take it. That's what GameStop's saying, right? UBS could be, Randy, could be, right? Remember, they have a lot of, basically the Swiss government. I don't know. I haven't checked on this in a while, but the Swiss government was like, weren't they saying something along the lines of like, I don't know if UBS should merge with Credit Suisse, or the Swiss government tried to make it, or let me rephrase this. From my understanding, I gotta double check this. I'm pretty sure the Swiss government was like, all right, you guys gotta merge. UBS is in trouble, right? It was for a long time, UBS is in trouble, UBS is in trouble, UBS is in trouble. And then finally, it's like, okay, things are really bad. The government was like, Swiss government's like, all right, no kiss, right? They combined like Credit Suisse, like Credit Suisse and UBS. And then Credit Suisse is like, Credit Suisse is the one, right? I'm getting all mixed up now. We got to wrap it up. But point being, one was looking at the other like, oh, we don't want all this. We don't want all these toxic assets, right? These poor assets on our balance sheet, and they kind of had no choice, right? But go look into that further. I'd explain that horribly. And when I start rambling and making no sense, that's when I know it's time to wrap up the stream. So thank you guys for being here. Hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Take care of yourself, your mental, your physical, emotional. Don't even think about the market this weekend. I try to honestly not even think about the stock market over the weekend. Not till at least Sunday. Then I'm like, all right, let's get back into game mode. I try and, when I log off here, like right now, no more thinking about GameStop, stocks, Bitcoin, all out of my mind for the next couple weeks. Couple days. I think. Back on the grind Sunday. So take care, everyone.